I think Paige might have froze.
Well, I don't know what happened there, but I guess Christina, if your audio is working at least, then if you want to tell Kimberly if you want to be a part of the panelist view or not.
It was supposed to be that Paige was the panelist speaker, and then I was going to help support her in the Q&A if there were any technical questions.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Sounds good. Thank you, Kimberly.
Sure. All right. Did we get Paige back? Uh-oh. Paige is multiple people now. This is going to be very confusing. Paige, are you still with us? Okay. Hopefully she catches on. Savannah, is there a way to put this in maybe just the view of the panelists? I don't know, maybe other people see it, but I just see Christina's name.
I have it in gallery view, so I can see everybody.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. As people trickle in, my name is Kimberly Colella. I'm the chair of the NAWIC National Sustainability Committee, and thank you all so much. Uh-oh.
I'll
Savannah.
try for another link. Hold on.
Okay, thanks. So welcome to our webinar. It's our second webinar for this year, and we're talking today about decarbonization through smart technology. Just a little bit about smart technology before we begin. Basically, smart technology is technology that communicates, right? It's so called smart because yes, it's intelligent in the sense that it's machines doing really cool things, but the acronym has been said to stand for self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting technology. Basically, these technologies have the capabilities to be networked together. This connection of systems allows for automation and other adaptive functionalities. These technologies incorporate AI, the Internet of Things, data management, and machine learning. So what does this have to do with decarbonization in the built environment? Well, it has a lot to do with convenience and efficiency and driving sustainability in a world ruled by machines and technologies that fewer and fewer people know how to manage. Smart technology can help regulate energy use and be helpful in like switching off lights or your heating or cooling system when a room is not occupied. So some examples of smart technology that we use every day are our smartphones, our smart TVs, thermostats you can control with your phone, and security devices like Ring and Nest. But for more details on within the built environment, I will let our three panelists introduce themselves and share their expertise. So just a brief introduction, and we'll go ahead and start with Andy.
Thanks, Kimberly. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. I'm honored to be a part of this panel. I'm clearly not a woman in construction, but I get to work with some exceptional women on a day-to-day basis, including one of your members, Elizabeth Sanfilippo, who's a coworker. I am sitting in on this panel for Nicole Berger, who is one of the directors of the Northeast HERS Alliance. I am a HERS rater or home energy rater using the home energy rating system. It was inaugurated in the 70s by a group, a nonprofit called ResNet. And ResNet evolved because of the oil crisis in the 70s. It was an opportunity to incentivize higher mortgages by proving that a building was using less energy. So if a homeowner could prove that their energy bills would be less than X or less than the bottom line, then banks would be allowed to offer a higher mortgage. And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were early adopters of that platform. Fast forward almost 50 years now. It took almost 35 to do the first million homes in America under this system. Another 10 to get the second million, 5 to do the third, and only 3 to do the next. So we're over almost 4.5 million homes now. And the goal of the ResNet or HERS platform is to do 1 million homes a year, starting in 2027. And that's coming right up pretty quickly. I'll talk a bit about carbon from two perspectives. Basically, houses are the story of carbon, and we are working on a national standard for embodied carbon of materials. So it is not smart tech per se, but we do leverage the Internet of Things, as Kimberly mentioned, to be able to collaborate and work under this national standard that we actually promoted it from the Northeasters Alliance, and it's been adopted, which I'm grateful for. So we have that piece, that component, and then at the end, we also analyze the operational carbon of a building. So we understand what energy is being consumed in the building, what that costs, and how that impacts the grid. So those are the two platforms that I participate in every day, and that's what I'll be talking about from that lens. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Leah, how about you?
Hi, I'm Leah. I am a initiative manager with the Center for Energy and Environment, which is a nonprofit located in Minnesota, but does work nationally. That works on energy efficiency primarily. My background is in construction. I worked for a GC as a project manager for most of my career and have just made the switch over to energy efficiency. But my focus for today is going to be a couple different technologies that we look at in market transformation, where market transformation is a push to encourage a market towards energy efficient technologies faster than they would already be adopted. And there's a couple technologies that really allow decarbonization and are smart. So one is an HVAC, which is really my wheelhouse. There is ERVs, energy recovery ventilators, as well as heat pumps. And both of those really rely on controls to actually be effective. They're great technologies on their own, but when they're partnered with controls, they stay effective and really can reduce energy use and take away from the gas use and focus on electrification. And then the other smart technology is luminaire level lighting controls. I'm less familiar with lighting. That's a newer technology to me. But the great thing about luminaire level lighting controls is it's a smart technology that's focused on reducing the amount of energy on the grid, which allows us to decarbonize just through less energy used.
Awesome. Thank you. And finally, Paige Schneider.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. My name is Paige Raska, and I am with the NAWIC Austin chapter. I've currently been working for Schneider Electric's digital building and building management systems division for about 3 years now. I'm out of their South Texas branch, but local to Austin. Schneider Electric is a global corporation that specializes in digital automation and energy management systems. We do a lot of things, but that is in my wheelhouse. So this year, Schneider Electric was actually named the world's most sustainable company by Time Magazine. So that's pretty huge for us. And with that being said, we take sustainability, decarbonization, and energy savings very seriously in every division that we partake in. So locally, I work specifically with owners, developers, contractors, and end users to help implement smart building solutions for new commercial grade establishments. So a couple of the segments that we specialize in are hospitals, hotels, airports, offices, higher level education. The list goes on and on. But to sum it up, we can do just about anything in any segment, and it's all centered towards sustainability and smart solutions. We view ourselves as our client's digital partner for sustainability and efficiency. So just a little bit about me, and happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. So as we've heard, many different areas can be impacted by these smart technologies. So we've mentioned heating and cooling in existing buildings, improved industrial manufacturing processes, transport and mobility, utility infrastructure and smart grids and automated systems and smart controls like the lighting and HVAC that Leah was mentioning. So you've touched on a few of them, all three of you, but maybe go into a little bit more detail on one of the examples of technology that your company offers that influences one of these areas. And more specifically, which area do you think will have the greatest impact on decarbonization? Whoever wants to start.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. So, great question. So Schneider Electric provides offers in each of these segments actually, and they're all very important. But I'll stick with heating and cooling in buildings and automated systems because that's kind of what I'm comfortable with. So Schneider Electric offers a digital service called Building Advisor. And what Building Advisor is it's a smart technology that acts as a decarbonization roadmap for your building. So it helps digitize the building to detect energy insufficiencies. It measures and reduces embodied carbons, and it diagnoses equipment faults. So whenever you're talking about embodied carbons, these carbons could come from contractors on a new construction building, or they could come from old equipment in existing buildings. So a pretty big wheelhouse there. So for example, we're wrapping up a Texas Children's Hospital job in Austin right now. They currently have Building Advisor implemented into their facility. So what Building Advisor is going to help this healthcare facility do is it helps reduce the risk of airborne contagions. It maintains positive pressures within patient rooms. It'll also improve patient care by identifying areas within the facility that has bad air indoor quality. And it detects these issues through leaky valves or sensor faults. I mean, it has a ton of things. It's very preventative. So I believe that automated systems like building management systems will have the greatest impact on decarbonization. Automated systems like Building Advisor that Schneider uses are the roadmap to the baseline of your building, and what the data is within it. So it basically makes sure that the building is running as efficiently as possible, and it tracks potential faults ahead of time. So, I obviously think automated systems will have the greatest impact on decarbonization, but that's just me.
All right. Leah, do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, sure. I think a system that's going to have a lot of impact to decarbonization is heat pumps. And I think controls for heat pumps is going to be critical. And that's all different types of buildings can use heat pumps. So on the residential side, we've got residential heat pumps, at least here in Minnesota. Those are becoming more and more common. And when those are combined with smart thermostats, customers can set rates and set their time of use so that heat pump is working when it's most efficient for our cold climate, and then also work well for the building, but also save energy and gas if the building doesn't need to be heated by a backup heat source. On larger commercial buildings, geothermal heat pumps, heat pump rooftop units, air handlers, and air to water heat pumps are becoming more and more common. And those are great technologies because they all just reduce the reliance on gas, which is a decarbonization strategy. But all of them do need to be set on pretty regular controls to make sure that folks are comfortable and that the switchover temperatures to backup heat sources, if necessary, is one that doesn't focus on that gas technology, but focuses instead on the electrical heat pumps. And then finally, kind of want to lean on the improved industrial manufacturing processes as well for heat pumps, because heat pumps can be used well in industrial manufacturing where maybe you're already creating heat or you need heat in different parts of the manufacturing process. And automating that can really allow the industrial practices to be more efficient and use less energy as well as use the heat that's already created.
Excellent. And then Andy, maybe you can bring that over into the residential world. You're on mute.
Sorry. I wanted you all to go first because our company doesn't really sell a product. Our product is building science nerddom. That's what we specialize in. So we're an analytics company, right? So specifically in the residential marketplace, though, I really appreciate the crossover to commercial and industrial page. You hit on a lot of high points for me with building information management, and Leah, you also the controls are really critical. What's really interesting about the two platforms I mentioned earlier, one is this embodied carbon standard 1550, and to the industrial production, what we can actually do is analyze uh, time of use based on what energy and what grid manufacturing facility might be utilizing. And if they can use controls to time their use of manufacturing when it's low carbon, i.e., during the day when solar's out, for example, in a state like California or Texas or Massachusetts, where I am, if you're using that energy at that time of day to manufacture your products, it changes the dynamic, of course, of how much carbon your manufacturing process outputs. And this is really a new product that ResNet has evolved, standard 1550. And it is taking a hard look at this manufacturing process. It's important because in that process, a manufacturing facility, whether you're making insulation or steel or concrete, analyzes how much carbon they output, and they produce what's called an EPD, or an environmental product declaration. That EPD is then used to compare products one to the other, kind of like a nutritional value that we might see on a box of cereal, or any other product that we consume at the grocery store. So this is kind of emerging tech and an emerging analytics to understand how the manufacturing facilities are operating. And then the other part of it that I discussed also, or I want to kind of swing back to, is kind of this smart grid idea. And using the building information management that you both discussed, and we also have what's called the CO2 index at ResNet. And what that does is it breaks the country up into 20 grids, or 20 markets for energy, and understands what the energy intensity or the carbon intensity of each of those marketplaces is. It's from the National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL. They invented this Cambium database. That database takes in my area in New England, we've got the New England grid, and that grid has certain intensity based on what the mix of fuel is to make electricity. So we're reading what the grid's doing, and then taking our buildings, whether it's a residential building or a school or industrial, and then understanding how that's consuming, at what time of day, its time of use. So we get a really nice picture from the outset to the end of how much carbon is being used in the building itself, from the beginning of its life through its life cycle. So it's a life cycle analytics tool.
So that's super interesting. A lot of this comes down to, I think you've mentioned controls, and we have all this data. What are we doing with that data? The smart technology in general is trying to really push for a shift from passive to active behavior on the end user, for the owner or occupant. And this is being able to show someone the data of how much their building or home is consuming, and have them adjust it, be actively adjusting it, so that we're using solar energy during peak loads and things like that. But why is this important, and how can we make it work? Because this boils down to human behavior. So it's something that we know is probably the most challenging thing to change.
Do you actually want to change human behavior?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Just,
Through
just
tech.
attempt. Or the
I'm
technology is just going to just end up doing it for people, and we'll just cut them out of the equation.
We work with ERVs a lot. I know Leah, you work with that as a product. We analyze and test ERVs for balancing to make sure that they're functioning appropriately. But what I've seen emerge are sensors that acknowledge when CO2 is high in a building, or when indoor air quality is poor, and it actually boosts these ERVs. And I'm certain industrially, even more so, in schools and education facilities and hospitals, that Paige mentioned also. I'm really intrigued by that. I think that alone, from an indoor air quality perspective and from a health and safety perspective, I think that's really important and vital to the tech. And I think in the broader picture, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I'm really interested in the way that legislation is going to drive the emerging tech. And that's a really important and critical piece because it kind of sets the stage. If it's in the law and it's required by code, then uh, you have an engaged audience. Um, and then I've seen the market transformations happen here in Massachusetts, where ERVs just a few years ago were just run-of-the-mill product, but once it became codified, um, they're 30-40% more efficient today than they were just a couple of years ago, and half the price.
Mhm.
So, that's a remarkable market shift in short order, just based on some code legislation. So I think that's an important part of the discussion.
Absolutely.
I'll
Layer page.
Yeah, I'll echo some of that with the demand ventilation that Andy was talking about. It reminds me of some of the lighting strategies that we look at, the smart lighting strategies. And there's some lighting control strategies that allow you to really decrease the amount of energy that you're using by using daylighting technology. So that senses the amount of light that's already coming in through your windows and adjusts the light for that. But they can also, lighting controls can adjust as you're moving rooms around in your building, or maybe you have an area of your office where people just don't need that much light. They're primarily working on a laptop or not using something that's very eye heavy, but another area people are doing a lot of reading off of plans or something that does require a lot of light. You can adjust lights with luminaire level lighting controls per each luminaire, per each light fixture, and that allows a lot of really specific control that allows energy use to be just used where it's needed and not set across a section of features, which is really nice.
Excellent.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this is a really important question, and it's super relevant now because there's a social pressure to be more sustainable now. What we're seeing in construction is that, the owner needs to be active about designing an efficient building, because it attracts a certain type of tenant. They could sell LEED green, they could sell zero carbon emissions, they could sell highly sustainable building as a feature, which means they can sell the building at a higher cost, and the tenants will end up paying more money for their space. So it's very relevant. For example, in K through 12 schools right now, at least in Texas, there's hundreds of millions of dollars being released to the public for funding if an owner promises to prioritize decarbonization and ensure like some type of energy efficiency plan. So essentially, there's free money out there to be had for owners who put sustainability first. So shifting, smart technology from passive to active behavior is crucial because it empowers customers to manage their energy consumptions, which leads to greater efficiencies. There's, cost savings that go with that, stability. So Schneider Electric right now, what we're doing to help encourage this is we produce smart thermostats, controls, smart plugs, electric vehicle charging stations, you name it, pretty much anything. So these products give customers more control over their energy usage, which kind of gives them a sense of ownership and more engagement now. So
It's well said. I hope that I think hearing you all speak about ventilation and filtration, I think maybe after COVID, people are becoming, that brings things kind of to home about health in buildings. And if we can know that something's alerting us when levels aren't exactly right, that we pay a little bit more attention to that than we do say to, oh, how cold it is. I mean, we don't want to really move from our comfort zones and pay that much attention to how much we consume on heating and cooling, but maybe the health aspect of ventilation and filtration will lead to the energy side. I'm hoping it touches, kind of hits home for people. So again, you keep mentioning things, which is so awesome, which is it shows how all of this is so linked. But what are the drivers for end users towards the use of smart tech for decarbonization? And we talked about legislation.
I
So
think
even
we're seeing like carrots and sticks. So legislation is a little bit more of the stick, but the carrots are also lots of rebates and incentives that are coming out right now, which is also the money that Paige was talking about that's being funneled to promote these technologies. So I think we're starting to see utilities across the country really focusing on rebates for these smart technologies and not just for an updated boiler or switching out your LEDs. They're taking a longer look at these smart technologies, which is allowing customers to be able to get cheaper and cheaper control solutions that's going to help with this decarbonization.
absolutely.
Yeah, to go off that, I think the most significant drivers for decarbonization are the demands from the customers, the employees, the communities, ASH rate 36 guidelines, lead green requirements, all these things play a big role in this. And I think more and more people now are realizing how traditional energy can harm the environment and their health and their family's health. So I think that's why end users, want a cleaner, greener energy option now. And it's so accessible. So it's super important to make sure that this shift from better energy helps everyone and it makes a difference. Plus, it's a chance for countries like the US to make their economy stronger, improve job opportunities, even advance human development, really. But technology is getting cheaper and better, so it's making it easier for companies to go green. So new technology like energy storage, smart grids, carbon capturing, this can help shift the greener energy motion, which is why end users are starting to implement them into their everyday life. Schneider does this. We have a decarbonization commitment. So we have it, we do it for market share, we do it for regulatory requirements, and cost savings. So it plays a big role in our go-to-market for sure.
Yeah, I feel like we probably could have used 2 hours for this panel, maybe
Oh yeah,
3.
There's so much to be talked about.
there
So much,
is. There
so
really
much. It's
is.
good. I'm grateful to hear all your backstories and hear all the things you're working on. It's really impressive. Um, in Massachusetts, 100% of new construction was home energy rated last year, or HERS rated
Hmm.
by someone that has our certificate. So we're analyzing all of the new construction in Massachusetts. It's the most in the country. I think next is Texas, where 50% of their homes were home energy rated. I mention it because it's forced the state to be really conscientious about energy efficiency. The home energy rating system is the benchmark is a 2006 home. And what we've recognized in the past just few years is that we can't codify and insist that buildings are much more efficient. We've kind of hit the ceiling of efficiency because of all the technology that we're implementing. Really high performance heat pumps, the ERVs, even gas appliances are far more efficient than they were, 7 years ago, 98% efficient boilers, for example. I mean, that's remarkable. So we can't do much better on that side of the equation. I'm seeing utilities start to incentivize low carbon materials. And this is in the residential market, but we're going to see this emerge again in commercial and industrial. It's fascinating and something that we really pushed on here in Mass and in New England, the Northeast HERS Alliance. Again, we promoted this national standard. We say, okay, we don't have a mechanism to analyze what we can do to drive down carbon in materials in the residential marketplace. We knew there were some things happening in commercial, and we just kind of chased it. It's really interesting, and we are now in development of a really interesting tool that is in beta right now to start analyzing operational and embodied carbon. So we get this kind of carbon use intensity for a whole building. It's pretty slick. And it's the Internet of Things, right? I couldn't even have collaborated with a team that I've been on Zoom for the past 12 months without the internet, right? So I know it's kind of analog compared to some of the smart tech that we're talking about here today. But without that, that's why it took, 30 years to get 1 million HERS ratings. And now the acceleration of the application is really fascinating. So the utilities, and I know we mentioned them. I don't know if anyone is from a utility on the call, but the utilities are really kind of the gatekeepers of funds, incentives, and in Massachusetts, the Mass Save program has really gone a long way to really drive a lot of these efficiencies home, along with really progressive Massachusetts progressive building codes. So that's kind of like the trifecta of components, like engaged builders, the utilities, and really high performance codes, in my experience.
I'm glad you mentioned materials because, you know, the technology, if we're adding it to homes or buildings for, you know, we're talking about heating and cooling or energy savings and systems. If, for example, I live in a 1924 house and the whole front of the house has single pane glass and no insulation in the plaster walls. But I could put a super high efficiency heat pump in as we did, and it helps a lot. But to round that out, the whole life cycle of looking at the holistic picture of a home or a building, it has to include materials. And we have so much advancement in materials. So thermal efficiencies are going to be really important. So we can new buildings going forward, not looking at this old stuff, but really how we can adapt and use those materials together with the smart technologies to really create better buildings. The next question, this is going to get kind of deep, but I want to pull everything together. A lot of the areas that are developing and trying out smart tech are emerging markets. Some say that this is the wild west of energy and decarbonization. As we've heard from our panelists, there's just a lot going on, but it's very different. And depending on legislation or lack thereof, people are doing very different things. And we're also still, I think, in a period of gathering data that we can use to drive the development of some of these tools and materials. So what is significant about this emerging markets, and what are some of the challenges getting in the way of the success of these emerging markets?
So I'm kind of assuming that this is a AI driven question, but it just kind of seems like it. But
That GPT question, I like it.
yeah, definitely. So Schneider's actually looking at ways that we can use technology to automate buildings, to make them smarter, without any human intervention. So, obviously this is a huge jump in technology, and Schneider's actually piloting the integration of AI into our smart solutions like Building Advisor, which right now in Europe and in certain parts of the US. So the new technology is here. It's not as far out as you think it is. There's a lot of positives that come from this as well. And what we've noticed with our smart solution is that the AI is like self-converging. So for example, let's say that Schneider implements Building Advisor with AI into a high-rise downtown. Basically, we're seeing that the AI-enabled controls can adapt to the changes based on the system and the building usage within it without any human intervention. So it's basically picking out the best solution for the building without any interruption or any assistance, which is pretty cool. So I guess that kind of leads into the challenges that come with this. So for the challenges, I'd say in the US, it's probably training the workforce. I think that's huge. So one of the greatest struggles with smart technology, and we see this in Building Advisor a lot too, it's great when a customer has that technology, but it's getting people to actually use it and use the functions and adopt the changes. I'm sure, as you guys know the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. A lot of people just aren't comfortable with putting in new technology. They think that their jobs are going to be taken. And it's really just to help assist you. So that's I think a huge challenge that will come up with this AI, smart technology stuff.
I wanted to jump in and just add to your thought experiment or your reality.
Yeah,
Um,
it's reality.
yeah, it totally is. Because you mentioned like really dynamic response performance on a single building. I think you were referring to just a single building. But what happens when we extend that tech to a city block or a section of a city? And what happens then to extend that to analyze the grid analytics, understand what the grid is producing, how clean that energy is at the grid? Do we need to engage the batteries because it's too dirty at that time because the natural gas plants had to really ramp up to take care of whatever was going on? I strongly feel has a real place in those analytics. That's certainly not human. It used to be humans could do those kind of back of the napkin, math equations to make it go, but it's far too advanced now. So that's the end of my addition to your thought experiment. But I do want to suggest too that your comment about workforce is really vital. It's really important to acknowledge it's a huge opportunity um, for people to, because you said it's already solved. I agree with that. I think that we've got so much tech and opportunity at our fingertips. We're all expressing some really advanced ideas.
Mhm.
The market's not ripe enough to make it all happen right now, but I think scaling. How do we scale is really the hinge, and I think it's people. Despite AI, we need 5,000 more HERS raters. We need to double the number of HERS raters in the country to do the work that we're doing today. And I'm sure from an HVAC standpoint, Leah, you can speak to that too, because we just don't have enough
Absolutely.
installers that know that next advance, that next tech, and even to do high level, high performance installs. So
Mhm.
I'm going to spend the next 10 years of my career making sure that the right people are getting the right jobs. That's my personal mission. That's where I'm moving into in the coming years.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with your sentiment about uh in engaging with the workforce and creating more workforce, because in mechanical contractors, that's something we're seeing even without these emerging technologies as a workforce need. So that's definitely something. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about AI and Paige, as an emerging market. Data centers is a big emerging market right now, and that's going to be taking a lot of energy from the grid. And that's going to be taking energy from the grid almost as fast as we can build more energy for the grid and more energy creation. So having technologies that decrease demand or decrease demand when there's peak demand from these data centers is going to allow us to build these data centers to continue to use that AI. So I think that's going to tie into how we use more efficient technology as we're building more technology that needs more energy, and utilizing that grid in an efficient way and in a smart way that allows us to grow those data centers, but also allows us to use the technology across other sectors as well.
Paige, did you have something else to say? I thought you went off mute.
No, I was just
Okay.
saying that new technology's here and it's here to stay. We're definitely advancing for sure.
It is, but I think there's also a danger here. Like we're speaking about the workforce, and I know I'm in construction. I'm on a construction site that has 3,000 craft laborers every day on it. And it is a struggle because we have a job right down the street that if something goes wrong or if the job down the street wants to pay $1 more, they're all going to go over there and there's not enough people to replace them. And this is across the board, right? All the trades. And I think this is something that NAWIC supports, really is trying to get not only young women, but young men into the construction trades. And I'm hoping that as we develop these technologies, that it's not scaring people off from getting into the trade, saying, oh, I don't know about this stuff, but we have to be developing the technology and then the way to learn about the technology and teach it to people so that they can go into these trades and start working. We need them in the construction industry, but we need to advance both the technology and the people at the same time, or we'll be in big trouble.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts? Got a few more minutes before we open it up for discussion.
Um, just remembering that actual people live in buildings, and that we're trying to build good life and habitats. Um, and I want to just acknowledge kind of affordable housing too as kind of a sector that really is going to be keen on relying on some of this tech, at scale. Thousands of units are necessary in Massachusetts, maybe 10,000 or more. And how do we do that at a high level so that we can leverage the tech to make sure that the bills are low on the energy consumption side and the indoor air quality is good and, population's not slowing really. So keeping an eye on the ball as far as, the end user, I think is really critical and important. And yeah, workforce development too. How do we simplify it? How do we make those paths clean? I think that's a great role for NAWIC. How do you get kind of forge those linear paths in a really complex market? We're talking about a lot of different tech, a lot of different ideas, and creating those opportunities for advancement and in an excelling atmosphere so that you can have a job that's rewarding in the new market. Because effectively it is. If wooden buildings is still going to be wooden buildings, but at the end of the day, the end result is really technologically driven. So making those paths is what's important in my mind.
Does anyone have any more information on how we're making these technologies accessible? Because you touched on it, and this was something that I had written down is, you know, for example, a heat pump is really expensive. So it's not something that everyone's just going to turn to, especially in lower income neighborhoods. So how do we make this more accessible to everyone?
I can add some thoughts on that. For people in states with IRA funding or who have applied for IRA funding, the federal grant that is for energy efficiency upgrades, there is a low income portion of that. There's HER and HERE, which is also confusing with the HERS rating, but that takes into account that. I think we need to, as a country, continue to think through that equity portion of it, of just making sure as these new technologies come out, how are we implementing them so that they are equitable and can be a price that's achievable for many folks, or create pathways to make that price lower for folks who need it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Or at least maybe we just, if it becomes legislation or policy for the percentage of low income housing that a developer has to build with the development, that is built just like the luxury apartments with the most efficient technology that the rest of it comes with. And, we find the funding, but it has to be spread across equally.
It's market driven too. So, our businesses are all in the business of making money and proprietary. So there's a lot of protection around ideas and tech. But I'm encouraged by innovation in the industrial commercial space in Page's market primarily because of the design heavy process around architecture in those bigger, larger buildings. You're talking about 20, 40, 150,000 square feet versus a residence. It's really design heavy. And you can do a lot of good, clean work up front and adopt a lot of tech early in that phase. When you're trying to do it in a residential marketplace, it's a different ball game, and you're beholden to what you can get off the shelf at Home Depot. So, or what you can buy on Amazon. So, understanding those levers are a marketplace evolution. And as much as I'm encouraged by what I see in the industrial side and commercial side, I'm eager to see that innovation on the residential side too. But the lead oftentimes comes from the larger building space.
Mm-hmm. And we see it a lot commercially, like the MEP engineer writing in the specs, they have to have, and that all comes from the owner, right? So the owner doesn't want a smart building, then they're not going to get a smart building. So it's all pretty much end user driven. Where's the money going? How can we make it more accessible? Things like that. And I wish the residential side had a cleaner, greener way of doing things at a cheaper cost. That would be pretty nice.
We'll keep collaborating. We'll get
Yeah,
there.
definitely.
Get there.
One of the benefits the commercial side has as well is mass buying. So when an
Mm.
entire chain of stores or an entire municipality upgrades their systems, they can buy in mass, and then that reduces the cost for their buying and also can influence the manufacturer to create more units at a lower cost. So I think that's something that I hope will influence the market to bring cheaper costs. That's not always the way that it goes, but programs like our market transformation team are trying to influence the market so that those costs do go down with some of that larger purchasing power.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, this has all been a great wealth of information. I do want to open it up in our last 10 to 15 minutes here. If there's anyone online that would like to ask a question, please unmute yourself and do so. I don't know if we have, I can't see a chat if we had anything in the chat, but I don't think so. No. Any questions? No questions. Everyone's blown away. It's a lot to take in. It really is. Okay. I have one question that came up as Andy was talking about, proprietary information. As I mentioned before, we're still in the process of gathering data that's needed to make some changes, right? And just as an example, I am really interested in decarbonizing the construction site. We pay a lot of attention to the building and what we're putting in it, but while we're doing that, we are consuming enormous amounts of diesel fuel for temp generators and temp power and all kinds of things. Temp heating and cooling is crazy through a summer here in North Carolina when you have a closed-in building, but your systems aren't up and running. So the biggest thing for me to understand what we need to do is first to show how much diesel I'm using on site and what that would need to be supplemented with. So I'm kind of in the business of just lots of Excel spreadsheets and collecting a lot of data. And on the sustainability side, we're actually a very sharing group of people because a lot of what we're doing is, we'll say, newer. A lot of these technologies have been around, but there's a strong focus on them now. So we do share a lot of data and information to try to help encourage each other to find solutions and bring everyone else along. Are you seeing any of that in your tech sectors, I guess, of being able to share important data without giving up proprietary information or secrets or whatever it is about the development of your products or services, but that could help push other people along? Or if you want to just reference some databases and stuff, because I know there's some out there.
One is DOE Better Buildings, and they do a lot of case studies that are product agnostic, and that can be great to look at different products in the commercial, I think also in the residential building sector, that have been tested and tried. And then they're also pushing technologies forward. So one that I'm a part of right now is the Commercial Heat Pump Accelerator, which is pushing building owners to adopt more heat pumps, but it's also pushing the manufacturers to create more efficient heat pumps for commercial buildings as well. So that's a great resource, as well as energy efficiency orgs across the nation. NIA is a great one in the Northwest. NEEP is a great one in the Northeast, but there's organizations across the US that do third-party testing. The organization I'm a part of, Center for Energy and Environment, does a ton of research, and all of that's public, and that's all third-party, product agnostic. So a great way to have some more information about decarbonization, sustainable practices without it coming from a specific product.
Excellent.
A lot of acronyms in the energy efficiency market.
There's so many.
I'll speak to the embodied carbon process and what I've seen in this market that's really emergent in just the past decade. And in the residential marketplace, it's only been 5 years where we recognized that there was a real opportunity. And it's a small pool of folks that are really pushing hard on it. It's growing and people are starting to become familiar with it. But what's been really encouraging is the sharing around it. The ideas aren't proprietary, right? We know we want to drive down how much carbon it takes to make anything, and that's okay. And if you start with that as the baseline, then the rest is kind of gravy as you pursue kind of these loftier goals of transforming marketplaces. And what's been really cool is expecting and having like clear vision on how the back channels and the marketplace itself starts to change when even conversations around embodied carbon happen. So that people are recognizing, hey, wow, that's a thing. Massachusetts is doing this with low carbon concrete. In Washington State, there's uh, I think 200 concrete companies that are doing instant EPDs around low embodied carbon concrete. And those are just kind of these are little blips that happen around the country. Once it starts to happen, it goes viral. And so socially, you start to see different pockets of professionals start to really glean on, what this emergent tech is or what the emergent idea is, and starts to adopt it. And so it's been a lot of really interesting hard work over 50 years. Um, since the 70s, 60s, 50s, when we recognized that we were really damaging the planet. But now with information, Internet of Things, we have this real great opportunity to share a lot of big ideas, and it's kind of leveled the playing field, so to speak.
Cool. That's awesome. That's really good to hear. Any final questions before we wrap up? I do want to say thank you so much to our panelists, Paige Rasco, Schneider Electric, Leah Gwentner, Center for Energy and Environment out of Minnesota, and Andy Buccino, Stevenson Company. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge. And we are having, I think next, it's a ways away, but we are, NAWIC is hosting a sustainable materials webinar next year with our PD&E committee, our education committee, and there will be more things to come from the sustainability committee as well around these things. So I appreciate everyone's time. This was awesome. This will be recorded and probably posted on our committee site. So anyone that wants to reference it or send someone to reference it can do so.
There is a question in the QA
Oh, hey, look at
from
that.
Holly Miles. If we have a minute.
How are EVs playing a part in decarbonization?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's definitely very relevant right now. I think the main thing is, you're not using diesel and gas, right? So you're not releasing those greenhouse carbons and all that good stuff. But and we're reducing our footprint. So Schneider right now, actually, we have a goal by 2030 to make all sales fleet vehicles to be hybrid. So it's just having a big push. You kind of just have to get out there and do it and influence a big group of people to do that. So even if it's hybrid and not just all electric, just making that change, I think really helps with decarbonization. That's a topic I need to learn more about. It's definitely pretty new, but I'd love to get into that and really know the specific details about everything that goes in with it.
Time of use for charging for EVs are also something to look into, because if you're charging it when there's a lot of solar on the grid, that's going to be a bigger emphasis on the decarbonization than if you're using it when there's not that clean energy on the grid. So that's another thing to look into with EVs.
And they are also, the EV chargers now are becoming smarter as they are linked to the internet, and they can show that the peak times and stuff for charging. So that's just another area where the technology will continue to develop and assist in the process of helping people buy EV cars and use them. Obviously, we have a huge infrastructure to develop. I'm putting 25 of them in the parking lot at our building, but there are also, local codes now that are putting them in their zoning requirements for for you know, you have parking requirements, and now you have EV parking charger requirements, which is really cool. There are, unfortunately, there's a lot of incentives out there, but I think that's something that some of them are starting to roll back, and I think it might be too soon. But we also, that's another thing where we have to develop the infrastructure as fast as we're putting out those cars. So tell Tesla to slow down a minute so we can catch up and put more chargers out there. And so, you know, you can make it across country without stopping. But yeah, definitely. Great question, Holly. Thank you. And I think that will do it. So again, I'll say thank you to everyone for your time, and enjoy your day, evening, morning, wherever you are. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah. Thanks, panel. Thanks, everybody.